You need to create environments where you're holding each other accountable for the right reasons and for the right purposes. Till today, a lot of managers still feel that they can hold the way things that does not matter. For example, what time did you come into the office? How long did you stay in the office, or how long were you online? Those are all not matrices that directly correlate your input into outcomes. When organizations call people back without a purpose, they're like, I want to see your face and hence I want you to come to office once in a week. That narrative did not sit well because people do not understand the purpose of it. The purpose should have been, we want you in the office because you need to come, brainstorm, whiteboard, come up with ideas, solve for things, make quick decisions, and move fast. Sad that people who need the most help are the ones who never take therapy.
That's right. Yeah.
But victims of those people are the ones who take therapy. There is a need for self-improvement, self-upskilling, growth, and getting deep into how I can become better as a person from the vision that you are providing me and the kind of growth that you are showing me. Many times one-on-ones lack this.
Historically, we've been working in person, right? That's how we've evolved, or that's how, let's say, organizations have worked. Then there came a certain sort of big bang event which pushed us to something, and then we came out on the other side realizing that, hey, this way of that we've been working may not always be super optimal, right? In your research, you said you've spoken to 200 plus people. What have you found? Like, what are those, let's say, systemic issues or situational issues that are existing today?
But yesterday I was talking to one employee. He's like, Meena, when I joined, I would have loved to have a lot of face-to-face meetings. That team was a startup team, and what happened was a lot of their stand-ups, their conversations, their grooming sessions, everything was happening on calls. Over time, the team started feeling a lot of stress and friction because everything is spoken, but there's no record of stuff. We're not writing it anywhere. We're not documenting it. Suddenly, there's less discoverability. There is also point where the manager would come back and say, "Why did you do this task? Where is the record of it?" And this fellow was like, "Oh my God, we spoke about it last week. I did the task, and you come and say that why did you do this task?" On the contrary, I've also faced problems where I've told my directs, or a lot of people have the same issue, that when they do face-to-face meetings and a lot of discussion happens, what is your the level of recall that you have, right? I mean, when you go by the surveys that talk about when you train and when you upskill, your level of recall is only 5-6%. I'm sure that same thing applies for meetings as well. You speak, there's a ton of things that you discuss, you come out of it, you know that there are 3 or 4 tasks that you need to do, but that is also at a very arbitrary level. And then people come back and ask, "Oh yeah, I think we remember speaking about, but I don't know if this task was discussed and solidified to go and execute." Then we've lost like 2 weeks in no execution. We're only planning, but you need to take ownership as a team, as an organization, because you never gave them that avenue of documenting things. We did not put anything in any practices in place where let's use Slack to do this. No proper stand up where either there is an asynchronous way of documenting it. Right? There's a task assigned. So a lot of people agreed. I did my dissertation. I did 200 interviews. I did 200 quantitative surveys and about 10 to 20 interviews, where people agreed that, hey, I think when you document things, it is a lot more superior than just speaking face-to-face. Face-to-face is important. It gives you a lot of possibilities for camaraderie. It gives you possibilities for that exchange. There's a lot of serendipitous relationship that gets built. But does it really help you become efficient in decision making? Does it make you become efficient in quick execution? Does it become efficient in creating that clarity that is required in an organization setup? Right? The asynchronous is definitely superior because the recall is more. There's always something that you can go back and discover, saying that, hey, we discussed this and this is the task done. There's a good track of stuff. That is where that difference is what is making that little bit more superior. Historically, we've been working in offices, but if you have to really go back in time and really analyze, during COVID, let's take pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID, right? Your pre-COVID era was all offices. We might want to quickly compare between pre-COVID and during COVID, when we were doing a lot of remote work. How did our efficiency really differ? Were we fast enough, or were we productive enough, or did we see that because we were not in front of each other, did it really deteriorate? I can give you like live example of organizations that I've worked pre-COVID, right? Eventually, you would have done 1 or 2 hours of work in between all of this, right? And once you go back home, you feel like, I've not done a lot of, I've not executed enough that was required. People will question me, hence I'm going to log in late in the night and finish some of the core work. Right? I just do not need anybody near me right now. And you go about your core work for 1 or 2 hours, and then you crib that. I spent 12 hours in the office, but then I have to work another 2 hours at home. I'm already burnt out. And I also observed similar patterns with tech. Tech, in fact, is even worse. They would stay in the office for like 15 hours. And every time I saw, there was never a full house of, engineering people on the floor. They would hardly get about 3-4 hours altogether. But when we switched to COVID, work from home, I'm sure everybody cribbed that, hey, I feel lonely, I feel so left out, I feel so out of place. I'm sure a lot of people took a lot of time to adjust because they didn't have the right systems in place to get things done. But the moment all of the primary and fundamental things were fixed, right? People started giving work desks and all of the other reimbursements, and at least the systems at home worked in a way that people could work comfortably at home. And once that happened, a lot of people became a lot more productive because the core hours extended right now. Because that means they were doing more execution than sitting and speaking about stuff. That over time may have led into slight burnout. But I'm telling you, during COVID, people were moving faster than they were in the office. Right?
Really?
But yeah, that also has its own drawback because again, you don't know who newly joined and who are the folks. You've lost touch. You miss those water cooler conversations and all of that, right? But come to post-COVID and people are calling them back to office. But I'm telling you, people are carrying their practices back, right? Because they were very classically conditioned to come into an office and do a lot of coffee badging, right? And the purpose is totally lost when organizations call people back without a purpose. They're like, I want to see your face and hence I want you to come to office once in a week. That narrative did not sit well because people do not understand the purpose of it. The purpose should have been, we want you in the office. We want to see that we've built a certain affinity groups we know needs to work together. Right? And the purpose is you need to come, brainstorm, whiteboard, come up with ideas, solve for things, make quick decisions and move fast. Right? If purpose was that, people would have come up with better ways of working together. Instead of just coming to office once in a week or twice in a week and showing their faces, coffee banding, talking to people, and feel that both the days were colossal waste of time and productivity. I don't want to take names, but yeah, I have a friend, my neighbor who works in Philips. She does this. She goes to office once in a week and she says that entire day is a colossal waste of time because I spend 5 hours on the road, 3 hours in the office, and I only do coffee batching and I come back. That if I have to measure my productivity, right, when I work from home, say all 5 days, I'm 100% productive. Just because I'm going to office 1 day a week, I've become 80% productive. You see, she's lost a day. So that is where the problem is about, how working together is a great way to run the organization, but you might want to adjust to the new norms and the new needs of people, right? And instill the right purposes. Otherwise, once you lose purpose, people are going to find the gaps in a way that they can just use it for their advantage and not for the organization's advantage. That's where inefficiency is seeking. And when you're working from home, there are a lot of channels that you're communicating and collaborating on. Maybe you're using Jira and Trellos and ClickUps and Slacks of the world, where you are constantly communicating and creating a record of what you're talking about. Your stand-ups are recorded. Your meetings, probably you're using Fireflies. You're using a lot of AI to talk about, transcribe your meetings, giving you action items, right? That suddenly gives you a very crisp idea of what you need to be doing instead of wasting time. So even if you spend 5 hours at home doing the exact same things, you're more productive than just using additional 3-4 hours commuting to the office and working in an office setup. But you might want to do that, right? If I come up with an idea on how to really solve for this, I would say group your affinity teams together. Say, for example, there is a product and an engineering team that needs to work together. and they need to solve for stuff, right? They need to like ship faster. That's your goal. Ensure that these two teams come together in the office one or two times a week and are able to really solve for everything that they do face to face. For example, there are grooming meetings. There are meetings where feature details are being discussed. There are meetings where feedback is being given. There are meetings where so everything that needs you to be there in person to make to kind of create full value of your presence. Do those in those 1 or 2 days, and then leave the rest couple of days for them to execute on what you plan. That's going to create a lot of cohesiveness in the way that you work, and you don't feel burnt out, right? So, or you're not wasting your time because you just came to show your face in the office. That way, you'll have to really look deeper into your organization and understand who are those people that need to work together, why they need to work together, what is the purpose of them meeting that day, right? Define those. Give that, I mean, with that top level alignment, give them that purpose and vision to be able to execute it. So that way, some efficiencies can be bought in the in-person work mode.
Got it. I'll extend this a little bit, Meena. What people mainly complain, at least in my worldview, what I've experienced is that when you are working from home or remote or whatever it is, you're not in the line of sight and visible to, let's say, someone. You can't really measure productivity, or productivity goes down. People are not working, right? People are moonlighting, right? Those are the sort of challenges that I have heard being voiced. Because you can't see the other person, you don't know productivity, or you can't measure productivity. How does that work? Like, what do you? And I agree with what you're saying, right? That you come to office for feedback, one-on-one coaching, right? Very difficult to do it offline, right? Non-verbal cues and all those things are important. You need to draw something on your whiteboard. You do it in person. But when you're actually doing your downtime, your coding and all of that, people have this notion that if you're doing it from home, you're not doing it. Is there a way that in your experience you found that there's a way to measure or solve for this?
I feel people who come back saying that if I don't think the work is getting done, are just coming from a place of no trust, lack of trust, right? It's super important that organizations and people work with, I really don't know, right? There is always this dichotomy around whether you earn trust or you just have trust. So until unless managers step up and are able to trust, are able to define goals and create clarity in their workplace and know how to hold them accountable. Everything that you're doing is just holding the whip in the wrong place. So if you need the job done, you cannot have your measures of I need to see you in the office between 9 to 5, right? So the kind of goal that you're setting for the person is to show up, not to get the work done in an efficient model. So when you're not calling what you need out in a more efficient way, your outcome are also going to suffer in the same fashion. So it's extremely important for, if I have to really be blunt about it, I feel managers who cannot define work and measure it efficiently in whatever way that they're working in, even if it is remote or hybrid or in person, if they have the wrong whips and wrong measures in place, there is a serious lack of ability. There's a serious lack of managerial capability. Even in office, even in an office setup, right? You cannot put a measure saying I need to see you in these 4 meetings. I need to see you in this 5 discussions. I need to see you on your desk for so many hours. I need to see you online on the Slack when people are just moving their mouses. So those are all the wrong ways to measure people's availability, right? If you mature up a little bit, you see a lot of compassionate leaders, more of wise leaders use better metrics to measure the people, and they also set the right objectives for them. For example, I need you to move this needle. I need you to ensure that there are so many offers, there are so many offer to journey ratios. I need you to get very deep into the quality of hires. We need A players in the market. Put those measures. I need you to have good alignment with the hiring manager. We need to have amazing candidate experience. We need to have amazing stakeholder satisfaction rate. You give those goals to people. It shouldn't matter to you that whether they work 9 hours, 10 hours, or whether they took off a certain day or they worked from home or whatever it is. You will see difference in these metrics because you have the right system in place. Without the system, no matter where you are, it's going to fail miserably. So that's where I would say efficient managers have to step up. If you say I don't know how else to measure, it's just the incapability of the manager.
Let's talk a little bit about measurement, Meena. Like, how would you do it? Let's take maybe engineering as an example and maybe our function people as an example. And versus, would it be different when you were, let's say, completely in office versus you're at a hybrid model setup?
So in tech, yeah, people have a lot of problem with tech. It's a little difficult to measure efficiency in tech because they feel that because it's a knowledge workforce, they might spend a lot of time brainstorming and looking into solutions and looking at various solutions. There's a lot of creative aspect to it on how we need to code, how we need to test, how else we can deliver the feature better, right? So when all of these purposes are reliant on the creative ability of people, it's difficult to measure, right? But it's important to have some grip on how you are ensuring the execution is happening. For example, did you have the right grooming session? Did you ensure everybody understood the needs of the feature, right? And
Mm-hmm.
do you have everyday stand up? Do you have those guardrails and checks and balances in place? Do you have reviews on a weekly basis? And do you also kind of track your timelines of delivery? It's not about the manager setting pace on, hey, I need you to deliver in 2 days. You can always give that accountability back to the people, saying how soon can you deliver, depending on the complexity of the ask.
Mm-hmm.
Discuss that in the stand up. Record that and ensure that people are held accountable for the words that they committed, right? And then give them that freedom to be able to go and execute. So that way, I think you can create a little bit more system in the way you handle tech instead of saying you need to be right in front of me all the time to be able to deliver those. I think if you go a little deeper, service organizations do a little even further, right? But that really sometimes may create a lot of burnout and stress people out, right? They have the timesheets, they look at velocity, the storylines, they track like the deepest level of metrics possible. But that could put a lot of pressure in the knowledge workforce in the product organization. But in service organization, it's important because they're billing people. So you can exercise any of those efficiency methodologies to be able to say that, hey, we did work and we were doing it more productively, because over time you will have data to prove it.
So tech also does it. Some companies, the product team uses what you said, Jira tickets, velocity. But you're right. May not. It's not covering everything. It's not covering
It cannot
knowledge
cover
sharing.
everything because it's still dependent on your judgment on how complex the task is and your judgment on how creative that solution needs to be. So that's why it's hard to track, but you can always create a database on, I handle this task in so much time. Maybe this is similar to this. You kind of benchmark it and then you kind of agree to a timeline to deliver.
And what about non-tech?
Non-tech's easier, right? Non-tech is damn easier.
Yes.
Like your sales knows
How it
exactly what
comes?
your quota is.
Hmm.
And no, I'm
Hmm.
telling you, nobody cares what your salespeople are doing on a day-to-day basis, right? But again, it's important to have the checks and balances. What kind of calls did you take? How are those demo calls? Do you have other recording options which we can look into on a random basis to see what's the quality of the calls that you're doing, right? How
Hmm.
are you being consultative enough for your customers, right? And of course, you have your very very visible matrices and KPIs that say that, hey, these were the amount of leads you got, and this was the conversion rate, this was your quota achieved. Those are very visible. And you can create more layers of and better systems in place that you're creating more leading measures to be tracked so that your quality of your work is uplifted. So those kind of systems can be brought into place. But I'm telling you, it's a lot easier in GTM and other functions. They're very metric driven, very visible goals and objectives, and people are able to go ahead and kind of really, what do you say, to those numbers consistent. Then even HR, your other product marketing team, everybody has a goal, and they are like really chasing that goal, and very visible.
So all of this is a large part of it is trust, right? Like trust and accountability. That's that. I want to double click a little on trust, right? Because when you think of it, trust is not one direction, but isn't it slightly easier to get trust when you're in an in-person setting, when you're seeing each other every day? How do you solve for trust when you're, like, let's say, a complete remote, or you just meet sparingly?
So I think you're confusing trust with engagement and availability, right?
Okay.
Um, so in an in-person, there is a notion that you can gain trust faster. because they are there and they are able to get the job done, and it's easier for you to reach out to them to delegate and get the job done, right? Many managers and I've spoken to so many managers, they struggle to give instructions in a online setting because they don't know how to
Okay.
articulate. They don't know how that candor will land. Will it land intact or it's going to land in a messy way? So they feel in person is a lot simpler, a lot better to manage in terms of quick reach and quick delegation and getting the job are more trustworthy. But look at it like this: like we cannot create a world where everybody and every work model is working in the same way, right? Or everybody behaves in the same way. When you are looking at people who are working remotely, right, you might have to place trust from a reliability and accountability standpoint. How reliable are they? You need to keep trust and then delegate it and coach them in a way they're able to fulfill their job, set them up for success, ramp them up enough to be able to deliver, right? And then hold the trust. And people will always come back to you with showing that they're more reliable, they're more accountable. If they commit to a deadline, they will keep up to it. If they are in doubt, they'll
Mm-hmm.
come back for feedback. And it's your responsibility to keep a track of what feedback to give and how do you better develop them to take up better, bigger challenges. And if you're not able to do that in multiple setups and you're sticking to just one setup, saying that I need somebody at my one hand reach and I'm just going to tell him to do stuff is not going to really help you evolve as a leader as well. So I feel trust needs to be looked at from a place where you're building mutual accountability for each other. My accountability about uplifting you as an employee, giving you that vision and growth in the organization, and you in turn being extremely accountable and a reliable person who also has the potential to keep absorbing that feedback and growing.
Got it. And it's not just for managers, right? It's for everybody, right?
Everybody,
If
yes, you need to learn to see. COVID stuck and suddenly everybody had to work remote. That was an adverse situation altogether. It could be anything. Your person went on maternity. After 6 months, the person says, I cannot leave my little baby and come to work immediately. Give me 3 months of work from home. You need to have that capability to be able to give them the right work, delegate better, extract the work from them, and hold them accountable for it. And if you're always doubting that this person's not gonna, deliver, this person is now gonna just sit and change a diaper, she will do that. She has to feed the baby, nurture the baby, and
Mm.
all of that other responsibility they have, and yet, it does not matter if she sat on the computer at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or late in the night or in the middle of the night because the baby was crying. She put the baby to sleep and then she worked for an hour. How does it matter if that person is able to deliver what you asked for and is holding herself accountable for what can be delivered? But yeah, it's not like you are just dumping a lot of tasks on that person with vengeance because okay, now I gave you work
Mm.
from home, so you need to carry twice as much as weight. That won't be possible. You need to understand the capacity, and then delegate the amount of work that person can take up. Agree between yourself. If she says I can work for 5 hours, agree between and say I'll give you half the salary or whatever it is, and make that work. Instead of saying, oh, this won't work, right? Instead of just going back saying there's only one method that I know to work with and everything else is discarded. That is a real
Mm.
figure.
Mm. And inclusivity also plays a part here, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't include the other person sometimes I've seen because that person is
So
working
that's
from
a
home.
big issue, right?
Yeah.
I think nowadays, when you come back to offices, if there's 10 people in the meeting, 2 people are on remote. I
Yeah.
pity those two
Yeah.
people who are on remote.
Yeah.
Literally, they just do not. I don't think anybody is taking an effort to make them feel included or belonged, or even ask for opinions or have them speak. If it's a heated conversation, the people in the meeting are talking extensively, and there is just no.
Yeah.
They just become a no wallpaper. So that's a sad scenario.
Yeah. And it's mindset plus a lot of, I don't know, it's a lot of hardware issues also, right? Where with
Yeah,
the systemic
maybe our
infra
systems are
issues.
not
Yeah.
like fully ready for it.
Yeah. It's not that it's not there. I've seen in one
I
of the
think I would
last
love for a
companies.
hologram. Like you bring 2 people in front of me, and then we have like looks like a real conversation.
I think that's what Zuckerberg was trying to do, right? When he went all in with Meta, and I think Microsoft also went in. So, Meena, I think let's switch gears a little to our audience, right? And want them to actually take away from this conversation and go and do it at work. I'll start with the one which we all do, which is interviews.
Mm.
What is your point of view on interviews? Like, is it should be remote or it should be in person or it should be a mix of both?
Yeah, I think there's a thin line between going deep into what the person brings to the table. And then there is also a need where you want to be extremely comfortable with whom you're hiring. So both needs need to be met. So I would say if you're a fully remote and distributed organization and there's no way you can meet each other, go in for an all remote hiring process and do it enough in a way that you are not just talking about skills, but you're talking about the will, you're talking about culture fit, you're talking about whether they are actual problem solvers or if they can manage conflict and all of that, fully remote. But if there are possibilities that you can actually bring them to meet with each other, it's important that you satisfy that other need of whether I feel super comfortable with their personality. That becomes more important. Easy to work with. I'm able to comfortably share ideas with them. I'm able to sit with them in a conversation, and the conversation can turn humorous, and we can have a good chat. Those are important factors as well, right? And many times you can crack it in a remote interview, but many times it becomes a lot. Even in person, there's high chances that in person is sitting and making it so formal and becomes uncomfortable for people, right? So, but you need to have that. You need to find the right place where you're able to evaluate both. But I think the whole point is just not about where you're doing the interviews. It's about how you're conducting the interviews. Are you really converting your interviews as a formal place where you're questioning and getting answers to, or is it a discussion? Are you ready to hear opinions of people that differs from yours? Are you ready to open up the conversation in a way that discussion can land into, hey, I don't agree on this? Do you give that safe space for people to be in that conversation, even if you're talking things that they do not agree or not feel comfortable about? So when you're able to create a safe space and make the conversation more of a discussion, you're actually hiring people who feel the environment is safe enough, that they feel that they can bring topics that they do not fear to talk in front of you. They feel that you are somebody who are receptive of feedback. And it's a two-way evaluation. The candidate is also evaluating you on the run, even if you're conducting those 4, 5, 6 interviews. Especially the leadership level, you have to give them that space. So you can drive it both. If you're able to bring that knack, you can drive it both in a remote and a in-person situation. It's about whether you are equipped enough to do that, right? I wouldn't say in-person is a great way, but I know a lot of in-person interviews that has failed so miserably because you might I think in today's world you cannot reach on time to any interview, right? So many candidates end up coming early and waiting, and people still being busy, not able to meet them on time. And then once they get into the meeting, it's so formal that it just becomes a question and answer session. The same things can happen in a remote call as well, right? It's I think the people who are driving it. You can make it as hostile and horrible for a person. You can make the experience really great for them. The takeaway really great for them. It might look like you learned so much between each other, right? And then you go back and reflect on it, and you feel like, hey, these are the people I want to be with.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't place my answer on any of the extremes. I think you'll have to use wisely those options.
I'll tell you, I'll ask you the reverse scenario. Companies who are not remote, right? They are working out of office. There is no setup of remote altogether. But unfortunately, when you go into hiring, you have to do a remote hiring because the person is in XYZ city, right? What are the guardrails you would suggest they look out for in this scenario?
Say, for example, you're sitting in India and hiring for US. Is that a scenario?
It can be you're sitting in Bangalore, you're hiring for somebody based out of Mumbai, right? You can't really bring that person in and do an interview. You have to take a punt and
There's
mean,
still
okay, everything
possibilities.
went well.
Absolute possibilities. People paid me to come to Singapore for an interview. It depends on the organization.
Let's say वो that budget नहीं है. You have,
Yeah, it depends
yeah.
on the organization. Budget है तो बुला सकते हो. But yeah, I think you'll have to still treat it as if you don't have a budget, you cannot travel and all of that, and you're doing it on a remote setup. I think the guardrails are that, the talent acquisition, the recruiter needs to have deep connect with the person. They need to know whom they're going to be meeting, some introduction and giving them areas of what is going to be evaluated. Those will just make them feel a little comfortable. And then it's also the onus of the interviewer who's coming into the call. Have that 5 minutes of, make them feel comfortable and tell them guide them through how the evaluation is going to go through in those 45 minutes or 1 hour of discussion. Lead it in a way that the person feels comfortable enough, right? And then it's also on the recruiter to go back and ask how the interview was, what did they feel, And is there any room for improvement? Is there anything that the interviewer can improve on? And collect those data over time. And then I think it's a collective activity and a collective ownership of everybody in the organization to keep improving on how they're doing conducting those interviews. I would say everybody needs to understand that people who are coming for interview are not just looking for jobs, but they're looking for the next best place for them to land, right? They may be coming from places where they've had toxic managers or environments that was not suitable. They're always looking to see that I'm not transferring myself from a frying pan to another frying pan, right? So you don't give them the heat in the interview. You evaluate them. See, you can make an interview so interesting because the moment you pose a question or an instance, you both can be solving that problem at a high level, right? And then there is a lot for each of you to learn from each other. Instead of making it look like, okay, now I don't think you answered it enough or answered it well. It's how you basically took the conversation,
Yeah.
right? So I kind of, so I also introduced one way of evaluating I hired TAs, right? So when I was hiring my TAs, I just didn't want to get into a conversation and ask them, on how would you hire for this role? What's your capacity? How many positions did you close? I mean, everybody has answers for it, right? And even if you fake it, how will you know? So I stopped doing that. I'm like, I'm not asking you numbers and all of that, right? I want to dig into the intellect that you bring to the table. Now, I will give you two roles. I want you to go back and do a research on, what is the talent and market mapping for these roles and how do you mitigate the risk of rejection for these roles?
That's interesting. Okay.
Right? Give me a 2-page, 3-page document. I only hired people who gave me convincing answers. May not be 100% right? But at least they use some intellect and some creativity on how would they approach this problem. And I rejected 10 of those people who gave me ChatGPT answers. Like literally one person submitted a 10-pager answer, and it ran into like so much of explanation and so much of jargon. I'm like, this is ChatGPT. Doesn't apply any thought, right? Give me a crisp way of how do you approach a problem. Just 2 pages or a 1-pager, fine, right? So I hired them and they're doing a fantastic job. My time to hire has come from 109 days, just come to 60 days, and recently it's come to 42 days. Exactly why SHRM gave me the award of excellence in TA. So yeah, that I think there are innovative ways to hire. There are ways you can look for people's creativity and problem solving abilities.
By the way, how much is your team using ChatGPT daily work?
They do use on a regular basis, maybe to write LinkedIn posts. See, I've enabled them with a couple of AI tools, right? One is Fireflies. Every call that they
That's
are
amazing.
doing,
Yeah.
they have Fireflies that is recording, because they can always go back and learn from it. Learn from what is that they told and what answers they got and how they can do a better job on screening or questioning better, right? Or if they have an intake call, and then they can go back on the Fireflies to see what were the inputs which we missed and we didn't read between the lines, right? So that way, I wouldn't say it's just ChatGPT, but there are AI tools that they're using to really enable them at the work. And they use all of these summaries, action items on a daily basis to also during the stand-ups. So people are able to understand what are those high priorities that they need to work on a daily basis.
Understood. I use a tool called Granola. We'll get into tools after this, but I use a tool called Granola. Same thing as Fireflies. Just they are I found them like 10x better at summarizing.
Well,
it's free. I don't know why it's free. It's free for now.
I'm
okay. Coming back, Meena, we covered interviews. I want to cover a few more. Again, same audience, right? We are talking to folks who are in the people function. They want to take away from this. Interview was very helpful. Let's do one-on-ones. What's your thought on you do it in person, off person? How do you do it?
So you have to understand the crux of one-on-one, right? I think I had an amazing write-up for it. किसने भेजा था मेरे को? But this person's called Matt McCurry or Machori. I don't know how to pronounce that name. He's basically a leadership coach. And he talks in detail about how to do one-on-one meetings. But the crux of is this, right? How much of what I've absorbed of that is one-on-ones. When you talk about one-on-ones with an employee, there is an employee's need to not just get clarity and instructions and guidelines and direction and vision of the organization. That is one. But there is a need for self-improvement, self-upskilling, growth, and getting deep into how I can become better as a person from the vision that you are providing me and the kind of growth that you are showing me. Many times one-on-ones lack this. people are getting into transactional conversations, right? Because even managers many times do not know how to evaluate and give feedback. So it's easier for them to just go back on a transactional conversation to say that, hey, okay, these were the 1 to 3 tasks, and have you done these 1 to 3 tasks? You're doing the same thing in stand-ups also. How does one-on-one differ? You're still just running through on tasks. So when you go down that path of just tracking tasks and having transactional conversations, the relationship that you're building is also lacks objective, also lacks growth, right? End of the day, when you look back on performance reviews, you will have only a set of tasks that the person has accomplished. Now you as managers, you yourself don't have enough pointers to tell what is the objectives and KPIs that you have moved, or show that impact to the organization, how your team laddered up to the objectives of the organization. Because you spoke in the language of tasks, your team is reciprocating in the language of tasks, right? And then end of the day, your employee ends up feeling that I've never had a healthy growth related one-on-one with my manager, and today he's just calling me on a performance review meeting and telling me that, hey, you did ABC tasks, but those are just day-to-day tasks, but I don't know what you did anything better for the organizations. Here, take your XYZ increase, which is not up to the mark because you just met expectations. So whose fault is it when you come out of months and months of this kind of practice? Whose fault is it that the employee did not grow? Whose fault is it that when the manager comes back and says, we kind of only rate you so much, and the organization can do only so much increases, but your growth is a long way for you to grow, right? But you cannot just say the ownership was only on managers. The growth perspective, the growth aspect of employee needs to be a co-owned, shared responsibility of both employee and manager. When did the employee come and ask, right, what is my growth path? Did they try and get clarity around what are those complementary skills that I need to build, and what are those areas that I need to work on? Did the person sit and analyze it themselves? So if you see people who really grow fast in their careers are not people who are waiting for somebody to come and tell where they are going wrong, but they're people who take they take charge of their growth, and then on a monthly basis, on a very regular basis, keep looking at how I've become better than my previous version, right? So that self-learning, self-motivation, self-push really lands them much higher than the expectations. But I think the managers also play equal role. There are managers who will come back and say, I didn't ask you to like overdo your stuff, right? I didn't ask you to go and look at other areas of upskilling. They can also create a very toxic environment where they feel insecure about somebody's growth. They feel threatened about somebody's new skills or new questions or new areas of upliftment. And so those people will start creating a toxic environment of do what is said. So I think one-on-ones play a key role in shaping that expectation in an organization where the onus of growth is between both employees and managers. And you need to both come together to not just talk about tasks and transactions, which is important. Okay, there is a place and time for it. And then one-on-ones, even if you're doing it on a monthly basis, people at Maturity and other people say that you have to do on a weekly basis. Maybe we don't have so much to talk about on a weekly basis. Maybe on a monthly basis, one day you're sitting and consciously talking about growth, consciously talking about few questions that each of you need to answer. How have you become better than your previous version? What are the growth areas that you see that needs to be improved? How can you get better at what you're doing already? So you're just not moving from doing the task, but you're moving from, hey, I did work, we executed it, we mastered it, and then now we're able to delegate and move on to the next. And so you're basically moving from creating people who can master their tasks, delegate, move on to the next big tasks or a stretch goal that they're working on, and then they get growth from there on. But it's hard to really coach people on this. There's a lot of emerging manager training that we do. But I think historically what I've seen is maybe when it's a small team, you're still able to successfully do this because there's still a lot of control and there's a grip in how you're executing it. When it becomes larger and the layers and span of control in your organizations become much, much more wider and there's too many people in the bottom, your next level managers may not really reciprocate what the systems that you're creating, right? There are chances it will end up very, very transactional at the bottom layer because people don't hold that maturity to take that ownership of people's growth. And people under them also will not have that maturity to see what is the growth that for them to really grow, right? So in larger organizations, you will see that people will sit in the same roles for years together. That's the byproduct of this. And people don't have a problem with it. So they want people who can execute and stay in the same position for years together. So that's how the entire organization functions. But I think in high growth places where you have employed a lot of knowledge workforce, you need to give a lot of emphasis on growth, and multiple months and multiple days of just transactional conversation is going to create a lot of friction. Your people will not like it. They will leave eventually. And then the value produced will be lost very soon.
And this is clearly agnostic, right? Whether you're doing it in person, whether you're doing it remote,
The
doesn't matter,
remote.
right? Yeah.
The interest that you bring in to develop your people is agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's in person or not. But you need to place that interest. You need to first believe that you hired A players, right? Because you have a very strict evaluation process that you bring people who are brilliant. You can't bring them and then boil them down to a level of tasks, right? You need to let them flourish. So that means there is a lot of scope for you to hear them out and give them so much inputs for them to keep going.
That brings me to the last one, which is a very tricky one. Learning and development. It can be on a one-on-one setting. It can be on a group setting also. Like learning typically has that annotation, right? That if you switch off, right? And on a when you're not face to face, you mentally switch off. Physically, your eyes may be open, right? Both have this problem. But in your experience, how have you seen it play out? Like which is more better given the technology we have today?
I think the whole world has moved towards bite-sized learning, micro learning. Gone are days that people could have the attention span to sit for a 1 day, 2 day long training. I think I think we have to blame the education system also for this. Literally, I think
Yeah.
the education system have built so many personalities. You will find personalities who love classroom. They will come, they'll diligently write notes, they'll take it back, and they will cherish it for life. They'll quote it whenever required and all of that. But let me tell you, I think with generations that are more screen addicted and the way they are right now, growing up, it's very difficult to get back that cohort, right? That cohort is very, very less in this generation. This generation has very, very low attention span. And maybe everybody has a piece of ADHD in them where they want things to go as so fast that their understanding and articulation is faster than the people's way of putting things across, right? My daughter just gets so super pissed off if I'm talking slowly. And she's like, just finish it. I know what you're trying to mean, right? So with that, I think all the TikToks and Instagrams telling you that if a reel is more than 30 seconds, nobody's going to watch. If your LinkedIn post is more than 1,000 words, nobody's going to read. And all of that, I think you need to build that muscle of being crisp, and learning needs to also be micro-sized. So small, small bite-sized learning. And plus, I think another big gap is the knowing doing gap. I think one of your other podcasts also was talking about it. Amazing insights, right? It's about you might learn a lot, but are you applying it while you're doing, right? So that needs to be bridged. And just about last week, I was in a roundtable with a bunch of HR leaders. And I think we had a bunch of GCCs, we had a bunch of large product companies, small product companies. Everybody has the same problem. They're looking for any technology that can solve it. But I think if you can bring in technology that can nudge people on a weekly basis or on a very frequent basis, these are the learning that we did, and these are the things that you can apply in your job. And why don't you use this today during your conversations? Why don't you use this today in your planning? Why don't you use this today in your meetings? So that kind of nudges keeps reminding people that they can use their the kind of learnings into practical usage. But yeah, I think there's still that huge gap on how to solve it, because you cannot look at people from a broad brush perspective, and you cannot use cookie cutter policies and practices for everybody. You need to make it very personalized. You need to understand people's learnability, learning curve, their the learning styles, and then probably push learning in a way that they enjoy and will be able to absorb and kind of in it do that.
Again, Meena, switching. I want to talk of well-being, right? Now well-being is something that people don't really get it right in any environment, right? At times, whether people who get it right in whatever environment. But in your experience, what would the right approach be, right? Whether you're at remote, whether you're at hybrid or in person, is there any difference, or how do you approach well-being?
Well-being has become the talk of the hour in this juncture. But before we get into the remote or in-person conversation, I think there's an important reminder here that sad that people who need the most help are the ones who never take therapy.
That's right. Yeah.
But victims of those people are the ones who are taking therapy.
So what does that mean?
Do you understand? Who are the people who need therapy? Toxic people who are narcissists, who do not
Okay.
understand boundaries,
Okay.
who are abusive, who are
Yeah.
ignorant, so self-centered, don't have any self-awareness, and do all the harm to people, but they never realize they need help, right? They're so ignorant of that fact. But the people who are victim of those people, that, hey, I've been so hurt, now I'm feeling depressed, and hence they kind of go and seek out help. That's the biggest dichotomy of
Interesting.
wellness today. It's an interesting fact. Victims of people who are absolutely, they just don't have boundaries. They just do not have, they're so ignorant and self centered. They do so much damage that the rest of the people are now in a juncture where they go and reach out to therapies. They go and reach out to the wrong type of therapies where they start labeling themselves. And they start taking help of a lot of medication that they might not require in the first place, right? They just stoop themselves so down that they feel that this is necessary, but in fact it's not necessary. Why do you want to take a lifelong medication that can numb your nerves, in the name of calmness, just make, and it just creates a lot more addiction, right? You feel anxious, and then you take a pill, and then that's just going to numb your nerves, right? And then you feel drowsy, and then you're not able to do anything. I had a lot of people in my previous workforces where they were anxious, but I couldn't help much because they were like half the time not in the position to really work, because they say, since I took the pill, I'm sleeping the whole day, so I wasn't available, and because I feel anxious, I'm not able to focus. And then the sad part is they do not have people to reach out to. Also, they don't feel safe to talk to people. They don't feel that they can confine in a friend and really speak their mind out without being judged. Those are the real problems we need to be addressing today. Either it's remote or hybrid or in person, right? When you have those conversations with people, at least HR makes that conscious effort to have connects. But I'm telling it's the onus of everybody in the organization. If you have a team of 5 people, be it a manager or just a part of the team, right? Make it a point to talk to people. Just have a very casual conversation with people. Try to understand they're doing fine once in a while, right? And then get to understand whether they're sounding normal or not. Ask them what's happening. It's okay for them if you feel that they won't open up at the first time. Don't give up. Keep talking to them. Eventually they will, right? So I that is
But
exactly
Meena,
what I
what are the signs you're looking at? Like, let's say you're having those conversations. I'm in HR, right? I'm having those conversations. I feel something is off. What are the signs I'm looking at? And I'm not trained, right? I'm not, and I don't mean me. I mean, I'm not trained on this. What are the signs I would look at and be like, hey, something is off here, something's wrong here?
So many people won't give it away so easily. That too in a
Mm-hmm.
professional environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to look professional. Everybody wants to look like
Mm-hmm.
I'm so strong. I've got it together. I can handle it and all of that.
That's a problem, no?
But
Yeah.
some early warning signs are there. Like there is frequent absenteeism. There is a frequent disengagement. They don't come into meetings. They don't talk often. So once you're able to observe those, observing is also a skill that not everybody is equipped with, right? So once you're able to observe those, you can, and when you have normal conversations, ask them, get to know them better. I hope everything's fine. All of that. So if you sense that something's wrong, you might want to double click on it. Don't say, is just everything fine or something's wrong at home and all of that. Just say, I didn't see you in the meeting. I hope things are going great. And is there anything that you want to tell? I'm sure you're speaking to your friends and all, but I'm here for you if you want to speak anything.
Okay.
So those are the things I mean, the point is that not everybody's conditioned for it. And the more you do it, maybe the 10th time they may open up, not the first time, right? With HRs also, right? People don't open up. They may open up about a toxic manager, but they will not open up about their lives, about the anxieties that they're going through. They feel that there's a lot that they can handle themselves. And if I open up, that could just be held against me, is still a taboo. But you need to create awareness. You need to create awareness. I think large organizations and even a few other countries do a better job of making people open up, right? They say if something's not looking good, ask. If something's not looking the same, investigate. It's okay to open up. It's okay to talk. They kind of advertise it. They put a lot of um, awareness posters around in workplaces. So that way, I think there is a leverage for large organizations to kind of champion it and ambassador it. In smaller organization, it's probably you're still, you can still talk to people. The moment you speak to them 3 or 4 times, if there is a real problem, you will probably kind of unlock it. Or if they are strong enough and they feel there are other friends at home and they have partners and people that they can speak to, they could have probably spoken to them and gotten better at it. But yeah,
Hmm.
you will not get to know until the case is really, really worse.
And
We tied up with Yordos, who does the exact same thing. They give one-on-one help, and they do not propagate any medication and labeling and psychiatric treatments, but they rather focus more on the psychological counseling, where you're talking to people, trying to unlock the real problems, trying to dissect what is the things that you did that can change, and things that are in your control that you can exercise change in, right? That way you're basically looking at not trying to control everything around you, because there is not everything that you can change, but you can always have healthy boundaries. And if that something's not working for you, just move out and create that safe space for yourself to feel better. So that is what they propagate.
And how do you solve for the situation that I won't name the person, but obviously I'm facing, right? That how do you get them to even talk to, let's say for your case or your those, right? That problem that, nee, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, when clearly
So,
XYZ is not fine. Have you come
but
across
that's
something like this?
that's the bottom part, the actual crucial part of it, Ramak. The people who need help, I mean, people who are suffering are the ones who need to consciously make that effort to allow people to help them or allow to get help. If they do not do it, it's very difficult. The only thing that as HRs
Mm.
and leaders in the society we can do is create awareness. Keep talking about it so much so that people feel like, hey, I think I can speak to someone.
You're right, yeah. I mean, when there's an awareness, they feel like this is okay, versus when there's no awareness and you go and tell them, hey,
Because
talk,
they
they
feel
feel
that,
more
hey,
victimized.
I don't think you really advocate for
Yeah,
me, right? It's not like
yeah.
it's your job. Your job is to do what's best for the organization. Your job is not what's best for me. So that's why I don't feel
Mm.
safe to come to you. But if you keep advocating it, if you keep talking about it, at least they feel like, hey, I think I can strike a conversation, because they at least tell superficially that they care about people. Then once
Mm.
they speak to you, then they will know that they care about them also, right? And we really want to make environments better for them, and we want to understand their problems deeply. But many
And
times
is there any, yeah.
it's not about solving their problems. Nobody wants a solution to their problems, right? It's about whether you can help them open up and speak about their problem and ensure they understand their problem more deeply themselves. Because many times people are worrying about somebody did something to them and what is the effect of it, and they're overthinking, and that causes anxiety,
Mm. Yeah.
right? When they open up, when you question and probe, they get to the deeper aspect of it, saying that, hey, it's if somebody spoke to me like this or somebody did this to me, it's their problem, not my problem. I control how I feel, and I control my boundaries, and I control how I
Absolutely.
kind of come out of it.
Absolutely. And is there any nuance to this, that doing this in person helps or virtually is just as good?
It's, I think, equally good, but in person does help, because there's a lot more freedom with the environment that you can use, right? You can just say, chalo, walk karte hain, let's take a coffee,
Hmm.
right? You can just use a lot more of the environment that you've built around you to ease yourself, calm down, and open up possibilities of conversations. On a Google Meet or anything, it's very conscious. It looks like
Hmm.
we are only here to talk about this one thing. But you can always probe. If you've built enough rapport, if you've built enough camaraderie, I think over time you can still get to the place where you're talking and opening up in a virtual setup as well.
Got it. Cool, Meena. I think this has been a lovely chat, a long chat. But before we wrap up, I would like to leave the audience with one thing from your side. See, not everyone has the option of working in a remote or hybrid, right? What are those key things you would take away and give that you've experienced in a remote hybrid that that person can then go and use, even if they don't have the option of working in a remote hybrid, they're doing in person?
Now, I want to go a little deep into that question. Takeaway in what format? Like,
So things that today you're using in a hybrid setup or you're using in a remote setup, right? It can be principles, it can be tools, it can be technology, it can be just ways of working that equally apply to when you're working in person. And it can be maximized and it's just good ROI if you use it when you're in person.
I think we should split that question into, or probably there are two branches of takeaways that I can probably suggest. One is a behavioral aspect of it, which is very intangible to measure. But I think the key takeaway is please identify the biases in your organization, right? And
Okay.
probably work in a way that you are not bringing unconscious and conscious biases in the way you work, be it both remote and in person. I think in remote you just become a little bit more conscious about the biases that you're bringing in because you feel like things are recorded. There's a lot of you know places
Mm.
where it can be made note of. In person, I'm seeing still a lot of biases exist because you can always do away with, oh yeah, I don't think I spoke about it, right? So I think biases is something that you need to watch out for and ensure that you create awareness in your organizations and create a more safe place for people to be working in that environment. Another takeaway which branch out is your way you efficiently work, right? Be it remote or hybrid. I think you need to create environments where you're holding each other accountable for the right reasons and for the right purposes. What really happens is, till today, a lot of managers still feel that they can hold the whip on a lot of things that does not matter. For example, what time did you come into the office? How long did you stay in the office, or how long were you online? Those are all not matrices that directly correlate your input into outcomes. It just gives a vision to people that you do not understand objectives. It just makes people feel that you're always looking at the items that does not create direct correlation of outcomes, but it's just your inability to manage. So really focusing on the right objectives for people to feel motivated and feel ambitious about working with you. I think that is another takeaway that both remote people and in-person working model should really take away.
That was really good. That was really helpful, Nina. All right, Meena. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome. I think there's a lot of takeaways here. It was lovely having you on.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you so much. I just
All
shared
right.
whatever I
Yeah.
felt and I've worked
Yeah.
in the last few years. But many times, what I say holds a lot of wisdom and experience, but I might not structure it so well. But I think we can do another podcast
You
where
too.
we can structure it even better because many times people love it when they hear things that are very academic and very structured. And there is action points on A, B, and C where we can do that as well.
Yeah. I mean, once you're, how much you can talk of what your research papers, once those come out, it can be very tactically take away that, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this, right? Awesome. All right.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Hello, then. I'm not switching off
Yeah.
until whatever the